mark my words, we will be in a recession within the next 5 months.
The gold card. What do you guys think of that? They said day one they sold 1,000, they're gonna sell 1 million.
There's no way.
Here's my little hack. If you're a rich American, give up your citizenship and then buy that thing, because it's the people that are buying.
Are you gonna do that?
No, I'm a patriot. Guys, Business Untitled. We're excited to be back. Exciting times. I was just talking to Mel and Dave, my great co-hosts, that it was only 75 days ago that I was at the inauguration, and Donald Trump said really clearly, I'm going to do more in the next 100 days than most presidents do in their 4 years. And to be fair, they are certainly trying. They are firing on all cylinders. There have been more executive orders. More is happening quickly than I've ever seen in the first 100 days of a presidency. For some people, it's great. For some people, they don't think it's so great. We're going to try to unpack some of what he's doing, its impact on the markets, right, and go from there. But, I put it in 4 categories. You've got tariffs and the impact they're going to have tomorrow. This episode will probably be aired after the tariffs, but, you've got Liberation Day, as Trump is calling it, when we are going to enact our tariff policy or announce our tariff policy. You've got tariffs. You've got Doge, Elon Musk and his crew trying to cut government spending by $1 trillion. We can talk about that a little bit, if he'll succeed or not, and what that means. You've got immigration. There is a broad closing of the border. We have put 60 countries on either, yellow, dark yellow, or red list in terms of visiting America, and we are forcibly ejecting people from the country, some going to El Salvador. And I'd say the last topic probably is, Mel? No. I told you, I had 4, now I've only gotten 3.
International relations.
Yeah, international relations. Peace, Ukraine. We did an about face on Zelensky. That hasn't gone over well with our European friends, and the impacts of us really pulling away from what I think was kind of 80 years or post-World War II security policy. And so lots to unpack.
Yeah.
Let's start with tariffs.
Yeah.
I love being back at this show because 2 seconds before we started rolling, I was gonna make the intro. He just took it. So miss those days.
You go. You start with tariffs.
No. I mean,
It's kind of right.
Tariffs just feel to me like it's just gonna be one giant clusterfuck for the United States and for everybody, because as soon as we hit them with tariffs, they're gonna hit us. And what happens there? How does that look?
Yeah.
I think we announced it, today or tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then they're going to announce theirs. What does that look like for,
Well,
before anybody, what does it look like for us? Because I think we pay the tariffs and a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Right?
So look, there's always been tariffs. Let's start there, right? This has gotten a lot of publicity right now because he's being more aggressive about the broad nature of them. And he's also specifically going after allies and friends, right? This started off as something like, China was dumping back, in the first term. And now it's
Canada,
it's
Mexico.
going, yeah, it's Canada, it's Mexico, maybe Europe, China, right? All these different places. But as a baseline, there's always been tariffs, right?
Yeah.
And so at its core, for 100 years, last year.
Have
right,
they
it's
been
always
this high, though?
Can I put some context? I think this will help the listener, because most people don't get this. So post-World War II, right? Europe was in shambles. Japan was in shambles. We made a commitment, both in Europe and in the U.S., Europe and in Japan, to help those countries rebuild. And we gave them better trade deals because we thought it was the right thing to do, because we wanted long-term future customers and partners. And so it makes rational sense to give someone who's beaten down a good deal so they can get back on their feet. When China was on their way up, they got better trade deals than we got. And so what's happened, and I think what Trump noticed, is all around the world, people have gotten better deals than America. Because remember, for the last 50 years, America has been the superpower. And so it wasn't irrational that we were giving them those deals. It was very rational. What happened was those deals didn't have any triggers to say, after 10 years, we're going to relook at it. Or when your GDP becomes 15,000 a person or 40,000 a person, we're going to look at it. When the trade numbers go this far, we're going to look at it. So these things all got calcified in the system. And I think Trump is looking at them all and saying, when you put them all together, we have the biggest trade deficit in the history of the planet, i.e., right, we buy goods from everybody, we don't sell many goods. We've hollowed out our manufacturing, and I need to change it. Right. Now, what's radical about what he's doing is he's taking a sledgehammer to the glass all at once, right, as opposed to staging it over 5 years or slowly working this system out. And that's his negotiating style. It's created a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and people are nervous. Yeah. But it's not completely irrational what he's doing.
Yeah.
He also has been told specifically by, some of the West Coast tech, thought leaders that he can collect enough revenue that he might not need to
raise
taxes. And quite frankly, he might be able to eliminate taxes. And so we'll see. Tariffs are taxes, right? Tariffs are price hikes. It will raise prices, at least in the short run. It will slow the economy, at least in the short run. Mm-hmm. And we'll see if we can get manufacturing rebuilt. But it's a huge bet he's making. Yeah. But that's the framework. And, it gets lost because he screams so much.
Right. No, that is the framework. Tariffs have always been here. I don't have to recount what Mike just said, but I agree with that. I think it's been very politicized in this moment, and it's part of the delivery too, right? Like you could kind of slip tariffs in and be like, hey, we're sorry to do this, but we need to, or it's like, we're hitting you with a tariff and you with a tariff, right? So it's his negotiating style. I think the other thing about the tariffs this time around is right, there's good reasons for why we have to look at the Chinese-U.S. relationship of manufacturing and balance and currencies, right? Like, because it is true that over the past 20, 30, 40 years, we've hollowed out manufacturing base. And we've really, as United States has basically made the trade that we'll take cheap consumer goods, right, and allow our manufacturing or kind of like working class jobs to be outsourced to other countries. That's basically what's happened for 40 years. And so that's the mental model people have in their mind, my TV might be more expensive. Okay, maybe so, but maybe that's correct. Maybe that's what needs to happen in this country. Maybe we shouldn't just have cheap stuff that people are buying for $50 and throwing into landfills a year and a half later and buying another thing. So it's fueled this consumer economy. It's fueled waste, right? I mean, there's a lot of I'm not going to say it's direct, but I'm saying there's all these cheap foreign goods. Well, yeah. And then I think the other piece about it is, specifically the way in which the Trump administration is going after Canada, after Mexico. But take Canada, right? There's something in there where it feels a little petty.
It
either
is
way,
petty.
It is
petty.
Yeah. In its delivery. And it's just maybe he doesn't like Trudeau and he's doing this. Maybe there's another reason. But in the scheme of things, I think it's also just the kind of raw, kind of in your face, against everybody. And you either get with us or we're going to tax the hell out of you. And then there's the economic arguments that lie behind that.
One of the reasons the markets have gone down is there is so much uncertainty around second-order effects. For instance, Canadian tourism to America is down 75% already. Bookings are down. My son was just in Germany. He said, "Oh my goodness, the Germans don't like us anymore."
Damn.
We've gone from being one of the most liked countries on the planet to one of the most disliked countries really fast.
Yeah, but
and so, we don't know what that means, right? Are they going to boycott our products? Are they not going to come visit our country? If you're in the hotel business, that sucks, right? And so we'll see. It's way too early to tell what the second-order effects of this are going to be.
By the way, and I'm going to that's also, though, immigration policy, and we'll jump to that in a minute, but I think more what's hurting that just as much is the fact that they're making visas much tougher. They're harassing people at the border. There's a whole other thing besides tariffs that's coming in. But go on, Mel.
But
sorry.
no, I mean, Mike framed it really, really good earlier, even so much that I was able to understand it because I'm not against Trump, and I'm trying to see how this whole thing plays out, and I'm just like a bit confused a little bit of where it goes. But how you just put it, it's almost something that kind of needed to happen for a long time. Is it happening? Wait, is it happening fast and not over the next 5 years, and it makes everything feel that much chaotic? But the way you just put it, it probably is something that needed to happen. So is it better for it to happen this fast and hopefully be done with it in 6 months and everything kind of balance out, or you stretch it out over 5 years when he only has 4 years?
So there are two kind of things to hold in tension, right? Part of what he's saying is, I want to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And part of what he's saying is, I want a fair trade, right? So fair trade would be no tariffs for anybody. And he has said that we'll have, you drop tariffs, we'll drop tariffs. If there was complete free trade agreements, we would never manufacture anything here, right? It would all be manufactured in the cheapest place. And so what's the balance of strategic manufacturing, creating good jobs, and fair trade? Free trade, fair trade, right? Two different words. So we had NAFTA, right, with Canada and Mexico during the Clinton administration, where we said, okay, for these countries that make up North America, we're going to broadly have open borders. And then we repealed it, and then there's a new version of that trade agreement. But these are really complicated questions, right? If you're a pure economist, you should make things where they're cheapest, right? That's why businessmen moved autos into Mexico as opposed to Detroit, right? Would you rather spend $40 an hour for your labor or $10 an hour, right? And so who gets to make those decisions? Do we let the market make them, or do we let a bunch of bureaucrats make them? It's really complicated.
Yeah, it is. It is complicated. And it's like he's saying it right there. Like, if you're looking at purely economics, you're going to go to the lowest cost place, right, to produce your goods. But that may or may not be good for us as a country, right? And that's the bottom line in the tension. I think it is complicated. I think tariffs, what I always laugh at is whatever the flavor of the day, the week, the month, tariffs is the flavor of the month. It's like tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. Nobody even understands tariffs, okay? Like I'm saying, there's so much economic complexity out there about how money flows move, how interest rates move, right? Price of stocks, price of commodities, like war. There's so many different pieces to this, right? Things that like the common person or even sophisticated people don't even understand about these money flows, what's going on. And so tariffs to me also, it's like it's over-indexed, it's overblown. If like we put a whole bunch of tariffs on, it starts to slow the economy and things are happening, they'll take the tariffs off, you know?
So I would disagree with you. I think tariffs are like, I think if we raise tariffs as much as they're talking about tomorrow, right, it will make every product that you buy where tariffs a lot more expensive. So you want to buy a Mercedes, it's just gotten 20% more expensive. You want to buy a G-Wagon or, you know, Prada shoes or whatever, you know, consumer good you want to buy, you want to...
It's going to make some products more expensive.
It's going to make almost all the products that are imported more expensive.
Well, imported, yes. It's going to make imported products, but in many instances, there's U.S. substitutes that still stay at the same price. So, like, it's not that. It's not
as long as they don't have parts from.
Yeah, it's more complex. Listen, if it's like something like a Mercedes, I'd agree with you because it's something like I want a Mercedes, and the people that are paying for Mercedes often are going to be able to pay that extra amount. But if you're talking about linens, tablecloths, lumber, like it's going to help U.S. lumber industry because there's going to be tariffs on other things. Now, yes, I know everybody's like lumber's going up, steel's going up, but it definitely doesn't hit every good equally at all. Like sometimes you'll have a 10% tariff or a 25% tariff. It'll raise consumer prices by 25%. Other times it may be 2% or not at all. It depends.
But broadly, it's going to raise prices. Like there's no way around it.
Okay, how bad do you
no,
think?
listen.
We announced this tomorrow. What does prices look like for 90% of things? What does the economy look like for the next 3 weeks immediately?
We will, mark my words, we will be in a recession within the next 5 months.
So let me just...
We will.
Let me hit one thing. It does... If you're talking about raising prices, though, is it that much different than the VAT tax from Europe? Right? VAT tax. Like Europe works on like sales tax, good tax, much more than income tax, right? Property taxes. So I'm saying you could look at tariffs almost like it's a form of VAT tax.
If
right?
we let me
You get what I'm
let me be
saying?
really clear. If America tomorrow put a VAT tax on all Americans buying stuff, it would also slow the economy and raise prices.
Well,
Like,
it's gonna
it's gonna slow the economy and it's gonna raise prices.
Sometimes when the economy slows, prices go down because demand goes down.
We're going to have stagflation because the demand's going to go down, but prices are going to. By definition, you're moving prices up. Like that, a tax. When I tax something 10%, unless I can cut the price down 10%, and then my margins go to hell, and you're slowing demand and you're seeing it already. Look at like Lululemon's, last quarter, things just collapsed. Like American consumers are going to start getting very scared. Now, there's going to be a little bit of funny business in the next set of data because people have been front running. One of the reasons a lot of commodity prices have gone up is people know the tariffs are coming, so they're buying them and hoarding them. And so buy it cheap now, so you're buying and hoarding. But if these tariffs come and last, we will have a dramatic slowdown. We'll have a price. It's not real inflation. It's a price shock, and then it hits a new equilibrium.
What I think is also ironic about it, though, is we just went through 2 years of like hellish inflation, okay? And that hellish inflation had nothing to do with tariffs, right? It had to do with money printing. So here we're talking about tariffs, raising prices, but actually that's not what just raised prices through the roof for the last 2 years, and arguably was.
But they're all coming down right now.
Well, they may be. My point is, it's a complex world. There's a lot of things that raise prices. There's a lot of things that lower prices.
Are you advocating that you think the tariffs are a good thing?
I'm saying like
I
economics.
can't tell which side of this you're on.
Look, I don't have to be on a side. I'm saying that people don't understand economic policy anyway. The smartest people in the world don't understand economic policy.
That's not true. I completely disagree. I think the smartest people in the world, the guys that are around, Scott Bessent knows what he's doing. I think.
Well, Mike, how did we just get rampant 9-11% inflation for 2 years?
Because we had a freaking global pandemic and everyone stopped working, and we did an experiment in UBI. We gave away a ton of money because we were panicked that the economy was going to collapse and people were going to start, fighting.
But did it work?
It did work. It
I don't think it
completely got
worked.
the economy back going. The stock market was at the high. GDP was at the high.
Yeah, but that was like a bubble.
We had inflation.
It was a bubble.
We had inflation that came and went.
Yeah, but that was a bubble that kind of
it
is
was-
crashing down and crashed down already.
The phone.
It's not a bubble.
How is it not a bubble?
The stock market's 10% off the all-time high.
Yeah,
How is
but-
that a
Wait,
bubble?
you don't think giving out all that money and the economy feeling great was a bubble?
No, I think it was. I mean, I thought it had euphoria to a second.
That's
There
ask
was-
every
No,
scammer
listen,
in Flatbush what they
Listen,
think.
he's. Mike,
No, I think we wasted a lot of that money. I'm not saying it was all well spent, but if you were the policymaker at the time, they pretty much behaved pretty well. They got inflation back under control.
They did listen, but they let it run like crazy.
A
in the
lot
first
longer
place.
than you should have.
So my point is like even the best and the brightest, even the guys that are controlling the system, never really know what the implications of their economic policy is going to be. They don't. It's like people are going to debate: is there a recession or not? You're 100% convinced in 5 months there's going to be a recession. Okay, Goldman Sachs says it's 35%. Right? Is chance there's going to be a recession. Right?
They've raised it actually.
To 40%, something like that. It's less than half, right? I mean,
I think they're now 65%.
All right. In any event, my point is that very smart individuals can disagree and can't always tell because the world is so complicated. So, what the impact of something like tariffs will be. So, yes, are you broadly right that by economic policy, tariffs raise prices? Yes,
That's just
you are.
math.
That's
That's just math.
It's math, but Mike, it's math, but demand can be reduced and therefore prices can go down. So you're talking about stagflation, but I'm saying if you raise prices, that can also choke demand. And when demand chokes, prices can go down for things as well temporarily. So I understand it's not math. It's like, I understand what you're saying. You add a 5% tax to something. For that moment, it appears that it's going to be 5% more expensive, but that's not always what happens. There might be a linen maker, a lumber producer in the United States that still maintains that price for the American consumer, and so no inflation comes through the economy. Like, I understand what you're saying, but it's more complex than that, and I think people are making a big, giant deal about tariffs, but we'll see what happens.
What's confusing, do you think they shouldn't be making a big deal about tariffs? Like it's the
I
number
think
one economic. I'm in Wall Street. That's all people are talking about because it drives so many decisions. It is a big deal.
It's just like interest rates were all the rage. Like,
Well, they're also a big deal. There
They
are
are a
like
big
3 or
deal.
4 things that move markets, right? And if you're in markets and you're
Wars.
investing,
How much does
wars-
10% matter in markets or your company?
What?
Like 10%. Like if you took a 10% loss in your company or a huge company, how much does that matter?
It's not the money you lose. It's
No, I'm just saying, how much does that matter?
well, if you have a product and you have to,
If you
lose-
have a company, right, and for the year you took a 10% loss in a huge
not a big
company,
deal.
it's not a big deal? Is it a big deal?
A
it'll-
10% loss, like meaning 10% less profits than you made the year before,
Yeah.
or what?
You're like 10%, just like 10% vanishing of your earnings.
Well, so your stock goes down
Mm.
a bunch, right? Because your stock trades at a multiple of your profits. And mostly, if your stock's trading higher, it's trading because not only your profits are growing, but they're growing at an accelerating rate. And so if they start growing at a smaller rate, you have a whole reversal of the psychology around your stock. So a 10% hit to earnings could hit your stock as much as 40, 50%.
So, all right, maybe this is the wrong question, but they said 10% of the money that the government gave out to boost the economy was stolen, which was like $280 billion.
Yeah.
You don't think that affect?
Don't
just
don't hear me
asking.
wrong. Of course, I said that money affected everything, right? It pumped up crypto. It pumped up.
No,
up.
but you said it wasn't a bubble.
All right.
There were plenty of bubbles. I said the economy wasn't in a bubble. It wasn't. It was fueled by a sugar high. It was fueled by government spending. And what the Trump administration and Scott Bessent is trying to do is to have less government spending and more private spending. I actually think it's the right thing to do. I'm not arguing with it.
That would have what?
They want to have less government spending. The government is, I've said this over and over, the government has kept the economy rolling for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
The last 8 years, really. We have to have a smaller government and we want to have a bigger private sector. So how does Trump want to have a bigger private sector? They want to cut regulation, which is a good thing as long as you have at least some smart regulations. You can't cut them all, but there's way too much red tape getting business done. Dave's talked about it incessantly, in real estate. So we're going to cut regulation. They want to keep taxes low and let the private sector kind of grow us out of the slowdown that's going to come from the government sector.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question on this. You said it earlier, somebody, like, I felt like Mexico is friends, Canada, allies. Why did we, and I think you said it earlier that it just needed change, but like, why do you think we aggressively kind of hit Mexico and Canada and all these countries with these tariffs in the manner we did?
Donald Trump likes to be sensationalistic.
But did that need to happen?
No, you could have the same conversations behind closed doors, quieter.
Yeah.
His negotiating style is bold and brash, and he thinks he's funny. Calling Trudeau the governor and Canada the 51st state.
Right.
I actually think it was a mistake.
Yep.
Trump thinks it works, and will Canada come back to the table and negotiate a trade agreement? Of course they will. They're not going to be, so silly to like, oh, we're just going to shoot ourselves in the foot just because we're angry. But has it done lasting damage to the relationship between Canada and the U.S.?
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah, I agree.
After the Trump administration, you think?
Yeah. Well, it'll take a while for people to start trusting us again.
Yeah,
Like
I
we're
think
flip-flopping so much as a
Yeah,
country.
yeah.
Biden says one thing, Trump says the exact opposite.
Yeah, and getting from tariffs to Doge, right? For a second, the way Trump makes statements is very bombastic. It's like in your face, right? So we're talking about tariffs. What I'm saying is, it's not that I think tariffs actually are probably on some level like a good thing, as Mike was saying, right? And we'll see. What I'm kind of saying is like, we'll wait and see, if they're really bad, we'll adjust, right? But I think it's partly like making a statement that there needs to be a more balanced trade agreement in the world, that the U.S. was basically getting, previous to this, was getting taken advantage of. Okay, so there's one statement. In the Doge statement, right, the big statement with Doge is, like, nobody cares about government inefficiency or over-regulation. Every regulation, it stays on the book for years and years and years and years. There's just more and more regulation, and this, like, drains productivity. In fact, Europe is a basket case basically because they're just so overregulated and so overtaxed and you can't do business there and there's so much government. And so I think again with Doge, it's a big statement, it's Elon coming in with his guy big balls and they're firing everybody and there's a lot of muscle being killed, being cut with that fat. But it's like, again, it's his way of making a statement that, hey, there's something here. Like, there's too much government. Nobody wants to challenge any of this. So we're just going to cut everything, right, and make a big statement. And so I think at the end, that's going to adjust as well, right?
I think you was the one who told me that's kind of like Elon's style. Like, he breaks things all the way down and then rebuild it back up. So
he's always like, if you're not cutting 10% too much, then you're not cutting enough. And then you, like, rebuild it back,
Let me make one transition comment because I think it's important to say. So part of this tariff thing, and it's different than the Doge thing, is a general belief around Trump and the people around him that the U.S. has to care about the U.S., right? It's an isolationist, not an expansionist, other than he wants to say Greenland. But it's an inward looking, right? America since World War II has been outward looking. Say we are going to be the world's leader. And Trump is saying, I want to be a leader, but not the leader. Let other people let other people have their say. Let's focus on America. And so in essence, we were subsidizing and helping countries. And he said, I don't want to help. I want to be fair. If it's Burkina Faso or China, let's be fair. But I don't want to pay for their people. I don't want to pay for programming. Shut all of USAID down, right? It's a dramatic move because it wasn't that much money, but it was in a lot of the small countries a big deal.
Isn't that like China's belief system too, in a weird way?
China had that belief system. They're now filling this void a little bit and saying, hey, we're going to actually help out around the world, mostly for China's sake.
I was just about to say they have been doing that for.
The real aspect is it's geopolitics, it's real politics. Like, we're doing all this stuff in the beginning so that we can control and effectively.
And China's always said that too, but they've been for years and decades just putting money into different countries and owning part of it.
There's only one country at a time that gets to be the reserve currency. But the reserve currency, it's the countries that they say that when you ask a wealthy person, no matter where in the world, they say how much they're worth in dollars. They don't say, oh, I'm worth this many shekels. They're like, hey, I'm a billionaire in dollars, right? People count, they do their trading, count their wealth in dollars. The country that spends the most on the military, the country that can protect the seas, right? Why we're bombing the Houthis because they were hitting ships. If you protect the seas, if you keep the sea lanes open, if you keep the trade lanes open, you have traditionally been the reserve currency. And that gives you an amazing advantage. And one of the things that Trump is putting at risk by saying, you know what, we're going to worry about America and not the rest of the people, you got to be fair, is America's reserve currency status. One of the biggest trades in macro this year is going to be short the dollar. You're going to make a lot of money being short the dollar and long the euro, long the Chinese currency, long other currencies, and long gold, right? Gold is having an amazing run because we're putting the reserve status of the U.S. a little bit at risk. I'm not jumping up and down and saying my hair's on fire. It's a philosophy that they're saying is we're going to focus here, and we're not going to be the world's policeman. And we're not going to be the world's banker.
I think you got to unpack a few things from that statement, right? I think that another thing that put the reserve currency at risk is, in a sense, the weaponization of the dollar.
100%.
Right? So when Ukraine and Russia war started and Biden's administration weaponized the dollar and said, well, all Russian overseas accounts, we're seizing them, right? That erodes trust in the dollar as a reserve currency, right? So there's one point about where what's always built the United States and has been our strength is that, like, dollars are green, anybody can own them, and we don't like play different rules for foreigners than we did for Americans, right? And that's why people put all their capital here and why our stock market trades the highest, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that. I think, just because the dollar's going down against other currencies does not by itself at all impact whether we're the reserve currency or not. We just may be overvalued as well, right?
I agree.
So I think, and in terms of the sea lanes, right, which that has been a historic argument that whoever controls the sea lanes, but it's a little oversimplified because it's really whoever has been the reigning industrial power of the world controls the sea lanes, and therefore you're the dominant currency because you protect that currency. You're able to defend that currency, right? And so what's been happening with China over the last 2 decades, since 2001 and the entrance of China into the World Trade Organization, is their economy has been growing fast. It's been slower lately, but in general, really fast. They're as dominant in economic power pretty much as the U.S. is at this point in time. And if you want to just talk about sea lanes, I mean, we don't have to, but like China, we can't build a single ship here, basically. Like China's got a navy that's equal to ours and going to surpass it very quickly. All the ships in the world get built in China, Japan, and Korea, virtually, right? And the U.S., we have no capability whatsoever to build ships, to build warships, to build Navy ships. The only way we can even build them is to go to Japan or Korea and ask them to build a ship. You know that?
No, I didn't know that.
And so,
but thank God they're allies, right?
Well,
that's why this geopolitical
what's
uncertainty.
so interesting is in this tariff, China, Japan, and Korea came out yesterday and said, we're going to huddle together and have a single response to the U.S. on tariffs.
Yeah,
so we just pushed 2 of our allies into China's hand.
Yeah,
like this is where this is happening so fast. Like they'll make some mistakes. We'll see.
Well, and that's the difference between like putting in valid economic policy or just being like an ass and getting in countries' faces and basically being like, none of y'all can fuck with me, right? Until like everybody gets together, and it's like we're not more powerful than all the countries in the world. So, I think the mistake is like of this administration is overplaying their hand with foreign policy. Like, yes, globalism has its problems. Yes, I think that Trump was onto things with, like, look, Ross Perot was onto NAFTA 20 years ago, right? The animosity that he's creating in the world with like our trade partners, with Canada, with Mexico, with Korea, with Japan, with Europe. I mean, Europe should be our natural ally.
It's interesting though. Like like Europe's a great thing to talk about for a second. So Trump, for reasons that are completely inexplicable, has this fascination with Putin, and he pivoted. We were backing Zelensky. Trump wants to end the war, and he basically says Putin's a good guy, Zelensky's a bad guy, and we're going to support a peace deal. But he's going to be it feels like Putin driven, not Zelensky driven, to everyone who's around. And then you had this crazy showdown in the White House, and the whole world looked. Well, while it didn't play well and it was mostly bad, there's some good that came out of it, right? Europe, who has needed a fiscal impulse. Europe has needed to say, we're going to spend money to start the economy going. I had a dinner with Mario Draghi, who might be the smartest man in Europe, about 2.5 months ago, randomly down in Miami. And he has the Draghi plan, which is his plan on how to get Europe going again. And he's like, oh, it's not going to happen. Literally the week after Trump and Zelensky had their brouhaha in the White House, the new German chancellor says, we're going to spend $1 trillion rebuilding our military, or $500 billion, they're not to $1 trillion. And Europe is like, and so the shift in mindset that happened that quick in response to Trump and Zelensky is going to be a net positive, as long as it doesn't become the Fourth Reich, a net positive for Europe. They're going to spend money, right? It's why the euro's going higher. It's why European stocks are way outperforming American stocks this year. And that might be great for the world's economy, right? You're going to get Europe finally spending money and growing.
What it also proves is, in a sense, that Europe was just a basket case, right? Just a basket case, and was freeloading off the U.S. quite a bit, right? In a sense, it really does prove that, because
it does,
they're
100%.
all of a sudden like deciding to spend on military.
Again, I don't think freeloading is a fair word to it. Like,
but I mean, I think that's just what was happening.
I talked to a guy that ran the armies in Europe, and he said, "You guys are getting it wrong. We are we don't spend that much to have every one of the biggest countries in the world do whatever we say. NATO did whatever America said because we paid. Now, if they're going to pay, they're going to do what they want, not what we want. It's a big freaking difference."
So you don't think they took us for granted?
I think
let's say not freeloading, but you don't think they took us for granted?
I think everyone got used to the equilibrium, but they
wasn't
did
equal.
what they did. But I'm not sure that's taking you for granted. I mean, Trump phrases as everyone's ripping us off. These were deals that we cut. We made all these deals ourselves. America made them. They should have been retraded before now. And so I would frame it differently than they're they're stealing our money, they're ripping
I didn't
us
say they're
off.
stealing.
I know, but
I said
that's
they're
the way Trump
freeloading.
is. That's the way
Yeah.
Trump has been framing it. I think it's the
Yeah.
wrong way to frame it.
Well,
Right?
it may be the wrong way to
We've been
frame
getting. They've been taking our shitty dollars and giving us good products, right? In general,
who?
Our
the
dollars
whole
hasn't
world.
been shitty.
We have,
No.
we have the largest what?
No, but
a piece of
we're
paper.
talking about Europe. We're
36
talking about
trillion
Europe
in
right
debt.
now. We're talking about Europe right now.
No, again, Europe's military was spending a third of what our military was spending,
Yes.
right? Broadly, and now they're going to have to spend a lot more. I don't think that's a bad idea.
That's right.
But it comes at a cost. They did whatever we asked them to do, and now they're not going to. They're going to do what they want to do.
They're
still
still going
gonna
to
do
do. They're
it.
still going to do
I
it.
disagree.
No, they're still
I
gonna
disagree.
Do it.
Not. I
Because
mean, in the next few years they
at-
will, but in 5 years they won't.
No, yes, they will. They have nowhere else to go.
Well, I mean, Trump doesn't want them helping the Ukraine, and they're helping Ukraine right now.
We could go into a
It's a
lot
fair
of little.
point.
We can go into. We
I actually
can,
want to touch on that real
no,
quick.
listen.
Why is that happening?
I think Europe
because
feels
they're afraid of Russia.
Europe's afraid of Russia.
Yeah, because
and they
Russia's
just
an
can't comprehend that there's some chemistry between Putin. He's a good friend of mine. I mean, between Putin and Trump, it's the most incomprehensible thing for most Europeans to understand.
Well, yeah.
And they feel betrayed by America.
You know what? Europeans, though, if you look, they're having their own populist right-wing shift right now, okay? Europe, like United States, has been a very leftist, controlled continent, government, or whatever. And so, there needed to be some changes there. Let's leave it at that, right? Like whether it was freeloading or not, they're too much regulation, too decrepit. They're not supporting themselves. They're basically becoming irrelevant in the world, and it's important that they become relevant, right? They share the same value system as we do, largely.
To be clear, the European economy is bigger than the U.S. economy, right? European GDP is larger than the U.S., and so they're a big power. Now, if they get their act together, another 27 countries, or how many countries? I think 27 or 29 or whatever. And it's not a federation. It's not a republic like us. It's more of a federation.
Yeah. Well,
but you're right, and they've got a lot of the same issues with immigration and.
You know what it takes for 29 countries to get on the same page?
yeah, a miracle.
Hard.
Literally a miracle. So I wouldn't too much worry about that. But let's shift to immigration and let's start at the top, the gold card. What do you guys think of that? Because here's the thing, we spoke about it the other day briefly. They said day one they sold 1,000, they're going to sell 1 million. I did the math. It's
no
not
way.
possible to sell 1 million because
No.
there's only 2.4 million people with $10 million in the world and 18,000 with $100 million.
Yeah.
You got 18,000 with 100.
How are we going to sell 1 million?
You're not.
I think it's
You're
a good
not.
idea. I
You're
just
not.
don't think we're going to sell nowhere close to what they think.
Here's
There's no
my
way.
little hack.
What do you think? Is a good idea or not?
Here's my little hack. If you're a rich American, if you're worth $1 billion and you're an American, or 500 million or a million, you should give up your citizenship and then buy that thing, because it's the people that are buying.
Are you
going to
do that?
No, I'm a patriot. But I have two friends that gave up their citizenship
Recently?
I have two friends. One's worth a couple billion. One's worth a couple $100 million. That gave up their citizenship.
Wait, since this happened? Or
No, they gave their
Okay,
citizenship 3 or
long
4
time
years
ago.
ago. One lives in the Caymans, one lives in Asia. And they're like, for $5 million, I broadly get all the rights of a citizen back permanently, and I can keep all my money offshore and not pay tax on it. Like, it seems so unfair that they can do that. The only reason they haven't bought it so far is because they want to understand, do you get state taxed on your global income? Like, all the rules aren't, can they revoke it?
They can revoke it.
What?
That's what they said.
What?
They said they can revoke it if they
But
want.
the new administration.
Yeah, the new administration said they could revoke it.
No,
if
no,
they
no.
want.
If
Oh, you mean
Trump loses in 4 years, the new president can.
No, but Trump even said they could revoke it if they wanted to.
Well-
anyone can get their. No,
You can't get your citizenship revoked.
that's good. That's a good point.
But in any event, I don't think it's Mike's point accepted about like possible abuse of the system. It's going to be like 10,000 people at the end of the day. I mean, there's not.
I'm short. I'm short 10,000.
You're saying even less. Yeah, I was
Wow,
saying.
you
Okay,
think less than 10,000
Order of
people?
magnitude, it's 10,000. Whether it's like 20 or 5, but it's not a million.
How rich do you think you
Yeah.
need to be before you spend $5 million?
At least 50 million.
So Google how many
No,
50
no, I
million.
know- I
right?
know. I'm
There are
just
probably
saying-
20. There are probably 100,000 people with
Yeah.
with 50 million.
Yeah.
if 10% of those would go there, there's 10,000.
There's a 10,000.
You know.
Yeah, so I don't think it's. I think it's again a lot of things he's doing are like they're like. How do you say it? Like they
Clickbait. They're clickbait.
Yeah, it's kind of like clickbait. That's what I would say. It's kind of like I'm going to say this thing because I want to make the point that we should be taking immigrants that have either money or education are going to contribute to the economy. Again, it's what I call like real politics. Like let's talk about it for 1 second. But like you could look at immigration and say we want to take your huddled, starving masses or whatever, or we could look at it and be like we want to take your best and your brightest. Right? Two different opinions. Gold Card is saying we want to take your best and your brightest. America also has this tradition of like your huddled, poor, tired masses, but that's what's gotten out of control lately, right? With the non-borders and things like that. Whether out of control is what. Not my opinion,
it's completely out of
it's
control.
certainly been out
It's
of
back
control.
in control, but it was out of control for 3 years.
Yeah, and
Got back
where
into control in 75 days, though.
Yeah,
It was already way back. The Biden's last 75 days because he was trying at the end. They'd already had it under control.
Whatever.
Trump some credit,
that's
bro.
Just, that's just.
It's true. Just look at the
for
numbers.
for 3 years
that's what
and
I'm
10 months he did nothing, and then for 75
I'm
days.
Just pointing it out. I agree with you. But it's under control. Dave's right. What would have been interesting is if Trump had said, we're going to give a golden visa, no tax benefit though. I think it's kind of crazy to get a better tax, that the golden visa guys get better tax treatment than Americans. That makes no sense to me. But we're going to give a golden visa to anybody that brings $1 million of assets into the country or $2 million of assets into the country.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay for it, but just you're a wealthy person. You want to.
That's basically
the idea, though. The idea is if you could spend $5 million on a visa, you're coming here to kind of do some business and add to the economy.
But you keep all your money offshore.
Yeah, I know, but you're not going to pay $5 million to come and visit here, right?
Listen, by the way, they had EB-5 program, which was you gave you invested $500,000 in the United States and created 10 jobs, and you got a green card.
Yeah.
That was EB-5. It still is EB-5. Yeah. So I'm saying that program exists.
But it was complicated to get done, though.
If you move to Doge, right? Again, it's what call it clickbait, call it like aggressive, right? But I'm going to start to build a pattern, which is what I think he's doing is he's putting spotlight on these problems that have been in the United States. Tariffs, what it's really trying to do is solve unfair trade practices and the hollowing out of the manufacturing base, right? Again, whether the methods, or the means justify the end, right, is an argument we can have, but it's putting a lot of attention on the fact that the manufacturing base is leaving. Doge, it's putting a lot of attention on the fact that governments are very inefficient players, and for decades, everybody talks about cutting government. Nobody ever cuts government, okay?
That is
it's just
very
like
true.
yada, 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 and it's just more public service unions, more jobs, more garbage, more deficit, effectively,
Clinton
okay?
was the only guy that cut government.
And when you move to immigration, okay, it's the same thing. The Democrats, the liberal vanguard, right? It ignored the problem to the detriment of the entire party, of liberalism itself, right? Because both Europe and the United States paid no attention to it, right? And just said, and it was that whole argument again about we need to take all the huddled masses or whatever you want to say, but it's not realistic at the end of the day. And it lost the whole Western liberal crew, their elections, including Biden, right? I mean, it's one of the major reasons. It played into the culture wars for that matter, right? And that was another reason that he lost. And so when you're looking at what Trump is doing, you really boil it down. He's putting a spotlight, and he does it in his very bombastic manner. And I agree that, he could be kinder, he could be gentler, but nobody hears that shit is the other thing. Nobody heard this shit.
Hey, that's not true. They heard
heard
it with Bill Clinton.
They did
Bill
nothing
Clinton
about it, though.
Bill Clinton cut the
Mike,
government more than
how much-
any.
Stop interrupting. And Bill Clinton was 100 years ago.
It wasn't 100 years ago. It was 20
Two
He got out of
decades
office
ago.
He got
He
office
said
in 20
decades.
in 2000.
30
was his
years
last-
ago.
All
It was
right, but how much
25
did Bill Clinton cut?
He cut the government immensely. It balanced the budget.
it was
Elon
30
cut
years
more in the
ago.
last 75 days. And if you want to talk
That's
about
not true.
Elon, wait.
Percentage That's absolutely
All
not
right,
true.
maybe it's not.
Not
You'll
even
know
close
better.
to
But
true.
listen,
Who
right?
cares about
Listen.
Clinton?
I don't know what's happening on the back end, but the same guy who just said is worth 200 billion or 300, whatever the fuck he's worth, right? Looks like, and it's happening, what you could guess what's happening on the back end. He is sacrificing his company and his worth to do this work. You could see that happening, right? Tesla falling 50%, his worth dropping. So it feels like he's sacrificing his worth to do this work on the back end. No.
I wouldn't look at it that way. I think.
I mean, but publicly, that's what's happening.
He
no,
became the second most
no,
powerful.
no. But Mike, is that what's? Forget about
No, it's
you.
not what's
wouldn't-
happening.
Is that what's happening? What it looks like?
I mean, he's listen. He's sacrificing his work / he's in the middle of the power structure.
Yeah.
Right?
He's
but
flying
I
around
don't
on Air
even,
Force One. He's having the time of his life.
Yeah, but he
But I don't
still
even think
is
it's
losing a shit
irrelevant.
ton of money. I'm just saying, if you want to bring money into it, it feels like he's sacrificing his worth to make this work.
All right,
I disagree.
But in any event, what needs to happen is spotlight needs to be put on government waste, overregulation, right? There is a ton of waste and nobody wants to deal with it. And partly nobody wants to deal with it because it feeds the democratic machine. And you know
it feeds both machines.
No, it feeds the democratic machine.
Public
Public
this is where
service
you're
unions.
so biased. Everything
I'm
is bad
not
on
biased.
Democrats. Hold on. Let me be really clear, and I will bring the chart on this
Yeah.
site. Republicans have grown government faster than Democrats over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
The deficits have grown faster with Republicans than they have with Democrats. You can take every 8-year cycle. Like this is a two-handed
Mike,
bad actor group, right? Debt to GDP has gone straight up. Trump's first term, he grew government spending faster than any president in history.
But again,
and so I'm giving him all the credit in the world for trying to do this.
Okay,
right?
that's what we're talking
I
about.
am
We're
giving
not
him all the
talking
credit
about
in the world.
Clinton. We're not talking about.
But it's been done before, and it was done successfully before, and it was done without a guy with a chainsaw.
Why are you so upset right now?
I'm upset because I don't want to normalize the behavior we're seeing in Washington. I don't want to normalize that we're arresting people without habeas corpus and throwing them into the thing. I don't want to normalize that good people are being fired from their jobs and Elon Musk is laughing about it with his chainsaw. I don't think that's the way America should run. I don't think that's the way our leadership should act. And I don't think we should just act like, oh, that's all well and good because it's Trump.
Well,
I
nobody
just don't.
said that. Why?
Well, you have.
No, I
You
have
kind of
not.
normalized it. You're like, well, it's
Mike,
just
I didn't normalize it. What I've done is I've told you that Trump was going to win that election for a long time before he did, okay? Because I could see what was going on in the United States, right, with these things that people are resentful of. And I'm not normalizing it. I'm simply saying that what he's doing is putting a spotlight on these things that were very big problems that were coming out of the liberal movement and like what I'll say like was the woke vanguard or whatever you want to call it. And it's been repudiated overwhelmingly, okay? And I agree with you. Look, nobody's saying like be mean about things, right? I'm not defending that or trying to. I'm simply saying that sometimes you over-index to the other direction and he's putting and what's going to happen is it's actually going to self-correct a little bit back towards the middle because people are going to start to say, well, maybe there's too much tariffs. Maybe he's cutting governments too much. We got to put some of that back. Maybe this immigration policy, which I'm going to talk about, is getting crazy because if people aren't going to come here from other countries and immigrants are the lifeblood of this country, and all of a sudden we're creating this situation where people from Canada don't want to come, Mexico don't want to come, Asia don't want to come because they're afraid they're going to get held up at the border, they're not going to get their visa. Well, that's going to end up harming the United States at the end of the day. So we're going to have to balance this. But I'm simply saying that it's his way of putting a spotlight on a bunch of issues that got swept under the rug for a long time, at least a decade or two.
Like I said earlier, I'm a 50-50 guy. They're doing things that needed to get done. I just think we could do them in a different way. And we're slipping in a lot. Like, when Pam Bondi was when we had the guys do the Signal, when they made the mistake of, discussing classified stuff on Signal and then came the next day and kind of lied about it. And Pam Bondi was asked if she was going to investigate. Like traditionally in America, the Attorney General at least acts like they're impartial. Her response was, well, you didn't say that about Hillary Clinton. It was a Fox News political response, not the response of the top lawmaker in America, law enforcement agency in America, law enforcement or lawyer in America. And so we literally we're eating away at the things that create this vibrant economy, right? The checks and balances between, like every judge that says something that Trump doesn't like, he's like, we got to impeach that judge. Like even Chief Justice Roberts said, that's dangerous ground. And so I think Trump has momentum. America wants the government cut. America wants the bad immigrants, pushed home, and they want the flood of immigrants to stop. He realized that. He's doing that. And so he's doing things that America wants, but you can't allow that popularity to then run roughshod over a system that has worked for
Yeah.
250 years, and that's what's at risk.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree with that last statement. So, like, taking the policies, let's talk about what's going to happen, right? Because we know what's going on, right? And so Mike's saying he believes there's going to be a recession in the next 5 months, right?
If the tariffs stay, right? Or you just think in general?
I think in general, listen,
Yeah.
we had 80 years of close to 80 years, right? Post-World War II, an economic framework that the world operated on, right? And a security framework, right? NATO, all these alliances, these Western alliances that broadly created the framework for this giant growth that we've seen over the last 80 years, right? Stocks have broadly gone in one direction. Trump is rattling both the security and the economic framework that we've been in. Might be for the better, might be for the worse. I'm not even going to make that
But
judgment
stick with
right
the
here.
recession.
But he's rattling. No, I'm just right.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me with that kind of change in volatility. A 10% correction is all we're going to get in stocks. So I would be surprised if the S&P doesn't have another 10 to 15% downside, down to 4,700, 4,800.
Yeah.
That's probably because growth slows. It's probably because we had wildly overowned American stocks relative to Chinese and European stocks. It's not the end of the world. It's not. It'll be painful for the people that own stocks because down 25%, officially a bear market. That's normally what you get in these big corrections. And so from an investor point of view, I'd be very careful to be owning a lot of stocks. It's
Right.
why Warren Buffett has got the most cash he's ever had in his life, right? Why Jamie Dimon was selling a huge chunk of his ownership. We're in a really dangerous environment investing wise.
Right. For stocks.
For stocks.
I mean, like, we're starting there, right? And then,
Yeah.
and recession, right? 2 quarters of negative growth, you believe very high likelihood that that's going to happen.
I
Yeah.
do. And I don't think it's going to be a horribly deep recession.
Right.
There's a lot of vibrancy in the economy still, and as he cuts regulation, that all takes time. If you cut all regulation tomorrow, you can't, and it's not going to happen tomorrow. You can't get the businesses up and running and hiring people right away.
Let me ask you this. So stocks, you're like, I don't know about stocks right now because you're short in general. Okay. Right. Look, there's probably some sectors you're more or less short, but what about bonds?
I think the yield curve is going to steepen, which means the short rates, the Federal Reserve will cut rates. That will end up helping stocks in the long run. But the long rates, because we're going to still have to produce a lot of debt, and you're going to have this inflation. I think the yield curve will just keep getting steeper and steeper. Like if you're a macro trader, and this is not me being so unique. I would think if you ask 10 macro traders, from Stan Druckenmiller to Paul Jones to any of the greats, they're going to say, be careful with equity, short stocks, or at least a lot less long. Yield curve steepens and the dollar weakens. Gold goes higher, silver goes higher. Central banks around the world are buying gold. And one of the reasons is, and here's a prediction. Within the next 12 months, the BRICS, right, Brazil, Russia, India, China, are going to come out with their own currency, a BRICS stable coin, a BRICS cryptocurrency, digital currency, which is going to be backed by some portion of gold. And so my hunch is they're buying lots of gold. So they come out with this thing, and that they'll use that to trade amongst each other to make the dollar less important. If they do that, Trump's already said he's going to broadly go to war with them, not war with guns, but trade war. But that is being planned, is my sense, and it's one of the reasons gold. You can just see central bank buying of gold. Like gold's going higher, and we used to give out a gold coin. We're going to start doing a giveaway of guests again. I said 3,000. We're already at 3,150. And, once you break those big levels.
Wow, when we started, what was gold at?
1,800.
That's insane. 1 year ago.
You should have listened. We've been giving it away instead of buying it. But again, when you break the old highs, you're in a thing called price discovery. You don't know where the market goes. It wouldn't shock me if in 3 years, 4 years, gold's 10,000. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Is that
But
a thing you're saying now?
I unfortunately don't own enough gold.
No, but he's saying that
who has a
central
lot of
banks are
gold.
buying it up, whether or not they can create some sort of BRICS reserve currency, which I think is like nonsense and will never happen. I mean, I'm saying
All
they're
right,
doing it.
we got a
they'll
$50
do it.
bet.
They'll do it. I'm just saying nobody's going to trust it. Like
Well,
Russia, India, Brazil, getting
At all.
unless they trade with each other.
it's just so hard to get
I agree.
off the
It's
US
so hard to get
system.
off the
It's
dollar.
so
I agree.
hard. No,
I'm-
and they don't
And
trust
more
each
than
other.
anything, like with everything that's being said, like mentally, just to shift people from the dollar is gonna be so. It's not as easy as you think it's gonna be. Just like you said, you're a billionaire in dollars. Just to switch that mindset is gonna take a lot more than what's happening now.
I don't predict it. I don't think it's going to happen. But I would tell you, all these kind of things happen slowly and then quickly. And I don't see it. But if our debt to GDP, they try to get it down and it goes straight back up. If cutting taxes increases the deficit, if we get a runaway deficit in 5 years, who knows?
I think it's more likely that the Chinese currency becomes the reserve currency than a BRICS currency.
But you
Because
actually think that?
I think it's more likely than that. Because I just
okay.
don't see.
But do you think that's
India-
likely?
Well,
Or possible?
over time, over
50?
many years, But I mean, I don't, Mike.
In our
look, Mike's
lifetime?
yeah, it could be in our lifetime,
Damn.
but it's not a certainty. I mean, there's a lot to unravel.
I mean, I think China's great,
We're
but
already-
people
we're
don't
already-
trust China overall.
We're already through the normal duration of how long someone keeps a reserve currency.
Nah, but we're also like Mike, but like the world runs on credit in a way that it never did
agree.
before. And so it's not all about manufacturing economy. And we're just so much better in credit markets, financial markets than anybody else.
And we're better
so
at
far.
and we're better at tech. And this is going to be the battle this year with China and tech. We're running out of time. Next episode we should get back to the AI drama because it's AI. You could almost do an episode every 3 weeks on AI. It's changing that quick.
All right, give us a quick
I'll
30
give you-
seconds on
I'll give you
AI.
one quick thought. Yesterday, ChatGPT,
Raised $40 billion, right?
well, they raised $40 billion. Yeah, hats off, largest private raise of all time. But their ChatGPT 4.0 that does the graphics, they had 1 million people download it in an hour.
Wow.
When they did ChatGPT, they were like, oh my God, 1 million people downloaded it in 2 weeks. And that was like so amazing. 1 million people downloaded it in an hour. And Sam Altman made a joke. He said, hey guys, could you slow down? Like you're using all my power. Like it was tongue in cheek. The acceleration of how fast this is happening. Like everyone keeps talking about it and it's still not there. Like it's still not replacing the jobs in a huge way. The robots aren't, but we are getting closer and closer and you can just see it. Anyway.
Let's do this again this week. I miss you guys. Are you not entertained?